So, you think you might be trans. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Let's break that down. Seeing as you're likely new here, I should introduce myself. Hello, my name is KaSyl. I'm a 26-year-old trans person from the southern United States who came out at 11, was forced back into the closet until I turned 20, when I came out again and then had to go through the entirely ridiculous and horribly long process of starting HRT before informed consent became the norm. When I finally could start HRT, it was 2019, I was 21, and I've been having a much better time with life ever since. And welcome to my closet. How does any of this apply to you? Well, I'm glad you asked, even if you didn't. Doubt and denial are incredibly common parts of the early trans experience. And that's not just doubt from outsiders, it's doubt within yourself. This phase is often called being in the egg or being an egg. It's the phase where you're not sure yourself if you are trans, or once you do know you're experiencing actual gender dysphoria, when you're not sure what you want to do to take those next steps. This may or may not describe you right now. When I came out in high school to my closer friends or those that I was romantically involved with, I had always told them that I felt like I would never transition because I felt that it would upset my future, that my dysphoria was variable, or that I didn't think I could manage actually transitioning. When I say it was variable, some days it was a candle flame in a dark room, where it's just there enough to light the room and say, hey, I'm still here, don't forget about me. And other days, the room was on fire, and it was burning, and I was suffering, and I wanted to put it out. Yeah. So that's not a universal experience, but it's my experience, and it's a very common one. Even those who recognize that, yes, I'm probably trans, I know I have dysphoria, it's not uncommon to try and shut yourselves down and tell yourself excuses as to why can't I transition? Why shouldn't I transition? What is wrong with me? I can manage this in other ways, can I? Maybe you can, but probably not. I mean, I tried conversion therapy of my own accord because I was terrified of the idea of transitioning. And it didn't work. Shocker. The thing that everyone knows doesn't work didn't work, no matter how much I wanted it to. Now that might have you asking, if you didn't know you were trans, how am I supposed to? Well, let's start somewhere easy. Are you experiencing gender dysphoria or, more importantly, gender envy? Now, these things in isolation don't make you trans, but looking at the causes behind them very well can, especially if you have gender envy and dysphoria for unknown or lesser explainable reasons. And what I mean by that is many people with something that they would consider to be gender dysphoria is a trauma response. I mean, it's not uncommon at all for those who are victims of sexual violence to feel if I didn't have those parts or if I had different parts that this thing would never have happened to me, or that if I changed them that it would be easier to heal. That is not actual gender dysphoria. That's something that is a trauma response. That's something that can really be helped through therapy and through working through that with experts and people who actually specialize in that stuff. Those of us who have true gender dysphoria, it doesn't go away through therapy. It doesn't have a cause such as assault or violence or abuse. It's caused kind of prenatally or in early development without any outside influence. I mean, we know there's a genetic link to gender dysphoria as well as prenatal hormone conditions which kind of cause this atypical brain-body development. It's entirely different, even though the symptoms are somewhat similar. So I'm only going to be talking about those whose gender dysphoria does not come from a trauma link today. Because if you have the other stuff, I can't really help you. I'm not qualified in the slightest on that. But for the rest of us, gender dysphoria and gender envy are two sides of the same coin for most trans folks. Gender dysphoria being the intense dislike of one's own anatomy, presentation, or perception from others. Gender envy being a deep longing or sense of jealousy when you see those who are born the other gender or a gender you wish you were, and that, oh, this is a coin flip, how could I have lost it? Gender envy can also come from strange, unexpected places with non-binary people or even some binary people, such as robotic characters, dolls, sexless creatures where they just don't feel like there's that kind of external or internal pressure to be anything. There's a common myth that non-binary people can't experience gender dysphoria or can't experience gender envy, and that's simply wrong. I myself would say I lean on the non-binary spectrum. I've had it since I was a kid. I came out at 11. My earliest memories at 4 years old were of intense gender dysphoria and of gender envy, which is that, again, deep jealousy or a longing pain that you kind of target at those who are what you wish you were a little bit. And this doesn't mean just being attractive or whatever. It's more like, would you rather be an ugly member of the other gender or an attractive member of the one you were born? And on that note, it's important to differentiate that gender envy and gender euphoria, not the same thing. Gender euphoria is the sense of satisfaction, joy, contentment that people feel when their gender identity and their physical or social presentation match. Gender envy is a darker, twisted, negative thing which fuels dysphoria, whereas euphoria is entirely a positive contentment with one's gender identity. It's not a sexual arousal. There's nothing sexual to it. Many people hear the word euphoria and kind of have that association, but it's not here. It's not there. It's not what I'm talking about. Another thing to note is that if you feel your gender dysphoria is related more to your presentation than your physicality, you might not be trans, because it's not at all unreasonable for a person who was assigned male at birth to like makeup and dresses and present more femininely, or for those who were assigned female at birth to be tomboys who like short hair and stuff. That's not a sign of being trans. That's just basic gender nonconformity. So if that's your entire route for why you think you might be trans, is that you like things that are associated with a gender role, that's not being trans. That's just being into other stuff. And that goes for the flip side too, where you could be a trans person who's thinking, oh, I can't be trans because I don't like makeup or I don't want short hair. You're connecting gender identity with gender roles, and they're just not. You can be a trans man who still wears makeup and dresses and traditionally feminine clothes. You can be a trans woman who likes none of that, who just wears a t-shirt and jeans. The thing that would make you trans goes a little bit deeper. If you lived in a world where there were no gendered expectations at all for any gender or sex, everyone wears completely gender neutral clothing, names are gender neutral, pronouns are gender neutral, etc., would you press a button to change your primary and secondary sex characteristics? By primary sex characteristics, I mean your genitals and your reproductive organs. For secondary, I mean the things that develop during puberty, such as breasts, facial hair, deeper voice, etc. That sort of thing. Would you transition exclusively for those things? If you answer yes, you're probably trans. If you said no, you very likely aren't, because you're associating your wanting to be another gender with a gender role as opposed to a gender identity. Gender identity, gender roles, and gender expressions are three very different things. Gender identity is the innate, deep sense of self. This is what fuels dysphoria, euphoria, gender envy. Gender roles are the societal expectations, like that men should be the leaders of a family, that women should be dainty and feminine, that women wear dresses and men wear jeans. That's all gender roles. And gender expression is where you fit in the combination of the two. This is where your clothing preferences, makeup preferences, style, etc. come into play. These three things are not linked. You can have a feminine gender expression, but a male gender identity. The gender identity is the key here. Are you with me so far? If not, let's just make this as completely short and sweet as I could have made this. Do your primary and secondary sex characteristics make you uncomfortable for reasons that are not associated with sexual trauma, abuse, or socialized gender roles? If you answered yes, that those things make you uncomfortable and they're not associated with trauma, there's a very good chance you're trans. Do you have a deep sense of envy of people who were born the other sex or gender you wish you were, even if they're not attractive or if they're living a mundane life? If you said yes, there's a good chance you might be trans. And lastly, if you could press a button to change your sex permanently, even if you were living in a society with zero gendered expectations, zero gender expression, just to change your physical form, if you say yes, there's a good chance you're trans. If you said yes to all three, congrats! I've got a video coming out for you. What does this mean practically for you? Do you try to fight being trans? Do you try to hide it? Do you live in a closet your entire life and then die with the knowledge that you could have done something more? You might. Or you could take your destiny into your own hands and actually live the life you know you need and take those steps to transitioning, either social or medical. In the next video I'm going to be doing, I'm going to kind of break down a practical guide to transition. I'm going to make sure it's as gender neutral as I can be, because transition can be terrifying yet terrific. It's something that, personally, it's incredibly rewarding. And the sense of gender euphoria and of contentment that comes with that is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important. But there are societal pushbacks to trans people. especially in an ever-growing political climate. Being trans is increasingly political and politicalized, and there's so much misinformation, especially out of the UK, about what being trans is, the effects of transition, and that stuff. So I'm going to be breaking down, for those of you who want to medically and socially transition, how to do that in my next video. Until then, my name is KaSyl. Thank you for watching. I hope you've all learned something, especially about yourself, either way you land. And, as always, thank you.
Doing things just to begin, facing feelings that you're different. You're trying hard to keep it in, but it's hard when you can't see the end. You paint your nails, you buy a new wardrobe, you try on makeup and different clothes, feeling things that you've never known, and it's all so chemical. Every month it gets clearer to see her there in the mirror. Think it's time for some real change. You paint your nails and change your name. I'm thinking it's gonna be Claire? Every month a bit clearer to see her there